Easy now, folks. I've ordered myself a couple of these feeding rings here, which are really good for a couple of different uses and relatively cheap, so fit in with the cheap stuff we need theme. Basically, they're just floating rings with an arm attachment on them, which means if your water level rises or falls, well, the ring moves with it. It doesn't end up hanging down out of the water or sinking below the surface. As you can see, they come in different shapes and sizes, and I think for the pair of these they were £6 or £7 online, so real cheap for what they are. However, there is a way of making them for yourself, making them even cheaper if that's what you want to do, using straws. Now typically these days it's paper straws we can find in the shops, trying to save the planet and whatnot, which are fully behind. However, if you're smart, you can still find plastic straws. We'll need plastic ones because the paper ones will just get soaked and wet and sink or fall apart, but plastic ones won't. So when we're making them for ourselves, we can make squares or triangles, whatever shape you want, kind of dictates where you cut them, where you chop them, and then you just put one inside the other. If I can manage to do this like that, and keep doing it until we've got our shape. So I'm going to go with kind of a triangle. If you find out one of your lengths isn't long enough, you can always cut a smaller bit and put it between the two, of course, but just to give you a rough idea, this one anyway. So what we would do next is tie a piece of thread to it, or you could use fishing line if you wish, and that's in place of the plastic arm that allows it to travel up and down. So the other end then you would tie to a suction cup. Hopefully you get the idea. This is a way to make one kind of budget. Maybe doesn't look as nice as the shop bought ones, but it's going to do the same job. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a bit. So the primary reason for using one of these feeding rings is if you use a lot of floating plants in your tank and you need a wee area that's not covered to drop your food into to feed your fish, then these are ideal. This wasn't one of my original points I was going to make, but also if you're trying to get light to a plant at the bottom of your tank when you've got floating plants, helps with that as well. They're an interesting way of helping you view your fish, even as a targeted spot to drop the food and watch them eating. It's quite cool in that way. I even had a better once that went blind and I had to teach it to feed in one spot. If I had one of these back then, that would have been dead helpful. And the other use for them that I had in mind originally was most floating plants don't appreciate getting splashed. It can rot them, it can cause them damage. They certainly don't appreciate being submerged and tossed about in the water. So if you're using the kind of filter where water does return to the tank with your floating plants, these can kind of give you some protection. If we place the feeding ring in front of the spillway or the return point, as you can see, all the water movement is concentrated within them and your plants are kept safe. It helps to reduce water movement on the surface in the rest of the tank as well. And most floating plants don't want a lot of movement. They want to stay still. So this really does help. So there we go. They're cheap, they're effective. I don't think they look too bad if you're not using a lid on a tank. I think they fit in well with the cheap stuff we need theme. If you've not seen them before, hope they've given you something to think about. And just before I go, remember the one we made for ourselves? Just to show you that that works. Floats. I can tie that to my light if I want, or to a suction cup at the back of the tank. But £2 that cost. fact, £1.50, wasn't it? And I got a nice drink out of it too. So, if you can think of any uses for them that I've not explored already, bang them in the comments down below. If you've not seen them before, hope that's, giving you something to think about, like I said. And otherwise, I'm out. Later, 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 later.